Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I'm your host, Blythe Milligan, and we are proudly presented by SPI Logistics, and we've got a great episode for y'all today. It was from a panel at Manifest, the future of supply chain and logistics, and this panel was, I know a lot of people like to brag about their panels, with a lot of people showing up, but our panel had men and women alike to standing room only audience, and we were talking women shaping the future of supply chain, presented by Vision. And so I was very lucky that Sammy over at Vision asked me to moderate another Vision panel for them, second year in a row that I've been able to do that for them. Love working with them. But Sammy lined up this incredible group of panelists, including Grace Sharkey, obviously friend of the show, staff writer and SiriusXM host over at FreightWaves. We also have Oana Jinga, who is the co-founder and CCO at Dexory, which is a warehouse robotics and software company. Then we have Nathalie Lallet, who is the VP of Global Partnerships at Uber Freight, and Rachel Levy, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Brooklinen. So I wasn't lying when I said we had a star-studded lineup of panelists to talk about not necessarily, being a woman in logistics, but the challenges and the accolades that you do get from just working really, really hard in supply chain and logistics and being really good at your job. And you also happen to be a woman. And so that's the framing of this discussion. And I hope you guys enjoy it all as much as everyone did. I got compliments the entire time during the conference that people were just expressing, men and women alike, how much they enjoyed this discussion. So appreciate all of the kind words, appreciate all of the feedback into Vision and the Manifest team for making this conversation happen. And so I won't waste any more time. Here is the discussion with this all-star lineup of panelists. Welcome in, everybody, to one of the final sessions. We do have another session right after this one, but Women Shaping the Future of Supply Chain. We have a fantastic panel for y'all today. If you don't know me, my name is Blythe Milligan. I am the host of Everything is Logistics podcast and also the owner of a platform called Digital Dispatch, and I'm going to let our other panelists do their intros. Grace?
My name is Grace Sharkey. I write for FreightWaves. I also host a SiriusXM show, and surprised you didn't say this, but I also do a monthly podcast with Blythe called Freight Friends, so I'll cue that up for you. Happy to be here.
Hi. Nice to meet you all. My name is Nathalie Lallet. I lead the global partnership team for Uber Freight. I started a journey on the freight industry about 6 years ago. Came from the very other side of the digital side of the Google business, and I moved out of the European market. So now I'm based in San Francisco. I lead a team from San Francisco to Chicago, West Coast, East Coast, and I'm very nice to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oana Jinga, and I am CCO and co-founder at Dexory. So we are a robotics and AI company. We have the world's tallest autonomous robots scanning warehouses. You can get to see them from tomorrow in the expo. But I think, interestingly enough, also I'm ex-Googler, so have moved over from the technology side into warehousing and supply chain. Absolutely kind of loving every minute of it. So hopefully we can share a bit of my journey today with you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Levy. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Brooklinen, and I've actually spent my entire career in supply chain. Actually, I have my undergraduate degree in it.
So great. We have a lot of, a variety of backgrounds with you ladies. And at first I want to start with Oana. Your transition from Google into supply chain. Can you give us a little bit of background on what were some of those early challenges for your transition?
Yeah, it's a very interesting step, I would say, because I've kind of studied marketing and management and then worked in the tech sector for probably about 12 years before I started my company with my co-founders. So you could kind of say like I'm still in the tech world, but the tech world for supply chain and logistics, and having to understand, obviously, I would say a sector that has been operating in a certain way for millennia, and coming to that from such a dynamic company as Google is, and obviously kind of pioneer in a lot of different types of technologies, embracing innovation, embracing everything that's new, and having to adjust to the pace of the supply chain logistics sector. That was quite an interesting jump. However, I have to say that we've been operating for about 4 years in the space. Things are moving at a crazy pace when it comes to adopting new technologies, and everyone is a lot more open to anything new, anything kind of that they want to try and test to push their businesses forward. So absolutely, yeah, it's fantastic to see that progress and how things are moving right now.
And then, Nathalie, you also have a very similar journey going from Google into supply chain. So I'd love to hear if there are any synergies or challenges that you experience as well.
Well, yeah, I have a similar experience in different markets as well. So I would say when I joined the digital side with Google, I spent 14 years at Google, started in Europe and then moved to the States. Everything was moving online. It was like the online, fast-growing online digital media. And the transformation itself was very interesting. Like those early days, I had a lot of startups, similar to what we see today in the supply chain industry. A lot of startup, everything was moving fast. And this digital transformation, when I looked at supply chain, I thought it was pretty interesting to see like this industry was also on the verge of moving to digital. So I saw a lot of similarities and differences in the way of the market has evolved as well. Like driving adoption is not that simple in supply chain. Like we see a lot of legacy solutions, a lot of broken, disrupted networks, nothing really connect together, and a lot of manual processes. So I thought it was pretty interesting as a career path to also embrace what was my tech-first mindset to really adapt that to the supply chain and making like the two worlds connect. It was interesting to see how in the US a lot of things were emerging and a lot of tech were still not connected. So I would say on the broader sense, when I joined Uber Freight and they launched in 2016, I joined in 2018. They had already a fully digital brokerage service launch with a bunch of tools, services for carriers and the shippers. At that time, it was really hard already to connect that tech with the larger system. So I would say it was an interesting journey for me, and I was really excited to join and to be able to drive the change, to drive innovation through AI, APIs, and make a change.
And then, Rachel, I would love to bring you into this discussion because of your lengthy career in supply chain, and you've spent that time working. I think your first boss was a woman. And so I'm curious to hear how that evolution of women in supply chain, what were your personal experience during that journey?
Yeah, it was great. The first person I worked for in supply chain was a woman, so she really became like my aspiration, driving force throughout my career. And you talk about technology, I'm dating myself a little bit, but there was no like email was coming out and the internet was coming out when I started working, and our first e-commerce orders were faxed to us and we like typed them into a system. So technology has definitely transformed over the years. There was not a lot of women. I mean, there was a couple women, and now it's really definitely shifted over. When I graduated, there was 30 women out of 150 in my major. When I started my career at Deloitte, there was 2 women in my class. So it's really transformed over the years, and it's great that now women are supporting other women, and it's really grown. My first boss, though, she told me, she said, this is the field you want to enter. Just be prepared, because you could be at a golf event and it will be 49 men and you. And so that was the advice I got almost 30 years ago. And there was a lot of times that you were the only woman and you just had to make sure you were showing up with your data, with your facts, like with your information, and really being strong and assertive, and actually not like just because of your gender, not being taken advantage of. And then throughout the years, just becoming stronger and then supporting women throughout like all the years.
Shifting gears a little bit into, or evolving into that technology landscape, Grace, I would love to bring you into this part of the conversation, because you talk to so many different people within logistics of just the overall technology landscape. So from AI, robotics, all of the, real-time visibility, things like that. What is sort of a high-level view of what the technology landscape looks like in logistics and supply chain?
I will say AI, right, buzzword that's out there, but I think it's earned its right. Clearly, we're starting to apply the technologies that the two of you, right, have spent your careers on. And I think what's awesome is that we're bringing people in from those experiences into logistics now. Talk about an avenue that we can start bringing more women in. This is like the perfect opportunity. I think that companies can say, we want different voices. We want people who have this experience and can bring that knowledge, right, to this industry. So, of course, we just did a wonderful panel on earlier this morning, data and data integrity. I think talking to a lot of companies out there, that's a big problem with making all of these wonderful technologies that you guys are going to see tomorrow in that hall. Making that actually work means that data needs to be right. And there are some really incredible, I think, women in data science roles that are going to have the opportunity to join this industry and have a really great impact. So I get really excited about the industry right now and, of course, the tech revolution, because for me, I think it's going to not even, of course, bring wonderful women in, but just different minds that we've never traditionally welcomed, I'll just say it that way, welcomed into this industry. And I get excited seeing that AI and data and all of these things, machine learning, et cetera, automation, even robotics and the engineering behind that, right? Those are less traditional transportation roles. We're not just talking about getting women in seats of trucks, but getting them into, I think, creative new roles that a lot of money is also invested in as well. So those are like the big topics that we're focusing on right now.
And Nathalie, I would love to hear your perspective on diving a little bit deeper into the technology area of how you're approaching just all of the different innovations that they're coming through. You hear a lot of, sort of the quote unquote buzzwords of AI, machine learning, but then you also have the more practical approaches of some of the visibility solutions and also robotics and things like that. I'm curious how you and your company are utilizing those different technology and how you approach investing.
Yeah, sure. It's funny because we had these different mindsets when I was at Google and when now I'm working the supply chain. So it's interesting to see how the big tech are investing into AI and in technology more broadly, and how supply chain is really leveraging those tools, those innovations to really enable their own solutions at scale. So in supply chain, mostly like AI for me and robotics, everything is very practical and very driven by the action. Like really go with the agent, go with actions, make it possible, reduce number of tasks, or make those tasks more automating. Automate tasking is like number one to drive a P&L impact, to make sure like it's not labor intensive, but also you really reallocate that time to your team and make this team more powerful, efficient, and work on more complex problem and issues. So I would say more broadly, like those big tech really build the tools, like they have really invested in building the grown-up tool, like we all need to make supply chain more efficient and become more productive in also the way like we think further. Like we are, again, like transforming this industry, starting with digitalization of the industry. Next is really the automation. How do we get to this automation? How do we make sure like systems talk together? How do we go faster? So it's a matter of speed, efficiency, getting all the flexibility we need, like the visibility is super important to supply chain. And this is where like AI really helps. Specific use case I enjoy, I would say the most, and I'm sure there are people in this audience who are maybe connected to this one, but when I see robotics and AI playing in the warehousing space, it's where I'm really amazed. Like thinking how AI plus robotics together can really transform warehousing in a more efficient way, moving things faster, but also thinking about like the storage, inventory, managing better inventories. And looking today with Uber Freight, where we launch new concepts, we launch new business lines to really go after end-to-end logistics. It's a lot of, hey, how do we automate the picking, the packing? How do we make smarter shipments? How do we make sure like there is no waste of inventory and distribution? So those are like the areas I'm most excited in the supply chain, and there are plenty of them. I mean, autonomous, autonomous driving, obviously with autonomous trucking, and there is a lot.
And Oana is speaking of robotics and warehousing. That's a perfect time to bring you in and talk about Dexory's approach, because you have the world's tallest robot, as you said earlier, but you're also a technology first company. So I'm curious how you're thinking about what your tech stack looks like and how you're applying that for your customers.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting what you said, Nathalie, about the combination of hardware and software. And I think it's fascinating, again, to see the hardware side kind of operating physically in spaces among like people and different types of machinery, and how everything kind of seamlessly works together at the end of the day. But I think, yeah, as a company, we are a full stack provider. So we actually design, manufacture, we produce the robots, we install them, we look after them, but also the entire digital twin platform that comes with our solution. because at the end of the day, what our customers are paying us for is the data that we collect with these robots and how we manipulate that data, what we can do with it. So we have a lot of very different teams within our kind of company, and starting from those looking at how do we make the robot as obviously robust as possible to be able to function in these spaces where, there's a lot of motion, there's a lot of things that are happening around them, so it's not your typical kind of closed off, caged off area. Like the robots have to be very, very robust and be able to operate around various different environments. Secondly, we have all the automation side of things for the robot themselves, so the navigation. We actually don't have to put anything inside the warehouse. We just operate completely where the warehouse is. There's no kind of infrastructure needed. So again, being able to do that at scale in spaces that are 1-2 million square feet without any beacons, any QR codes on the floor or anything else like that, it's quite a complex thing in itself. And then again, how we capture the data, the cameras that we have, the sensors, and how those kind of data points come together on top of each other. Another big team there. And then, when it comes to the digital twin, how we visualize that, how we then start to mathematically kind of compute where customers can consolidate stock, how they can reduce distances between pick and reserve locations. So there's so much technology in what we do, and the interesting part is somebody was telling me the other day we could probably be 10 different companies, but we are one. And I think that's where the magic happens, is because it all comes together. So we are absolutely technology first. We have some of the best minds in the field working for us. So very fortunate to have that, and also we're able to bring some of that to our customers as well. So I think it's to what I was saying earlier, people are a lot more open to hearing us out, to understand how things actually work, what's behind the technology, obviously get a bit of a glimpse into that technology, and then with that, obviously get the confidence that we can deliver to what we say we can deliver. So there's a lot to unpack there.
And then Rachel, we've heard from the logistics side of things, but what about from the shipper side of things? What technology is important to you?
That's a great question. So, I oversee obviously a lot from that perspective. So we're looking at everything, obviously AI, but everything from origin to receiving in product to fulfillment to customer experience to the order cycle to fraud to returns to payment. So the entire tech stack. And so we've been injecting AI for now more than a year, really starting the customer experience side, how we can get information faster, both to the customer and to our agents. This year, a lot of companies had record high in terms of that interaction. Our average handle time was way down using AI. And so now it's how do we deploy it more? Last year, we actually discovered Vision here. It was great. My director and I, we walked through their booth, and we've been using the technology now for a year. And so we're here to learn, to say what else can we deploy into our tech stack, and it's a constant evolution. It's a constant learning. What we're using today may be something different next year, 6 months. It's constant. So we want to know what is latest and greatest that's going to involve us as a business, and how do we shift the work that people are doing to make it more value add and less manual work as we evolve. And I think on the global side, it's even more important because everything that was said in earlier panels, the global supply chain, the volatility, the uncertainty. So you have to be able to react fast based on the data changing, and you may actually send stuff to different ports, or you may change your routes, so you just need information faster to make better decisions. You don't want people to go get that information. You want the technology to bring them so you can spend time on solutioning.
Switching gears a little bit, Grace, I want to talk to you about, we mentioned earlier with all of the women that you have the pleasure of speaking with working at FreightWaves. I'm curious how women's culture within logistics, how it currently stands right now and how you see it evolving in the future.
The one thing I feel like the last couple of years doing interviews is companies are sending me more women as their spokespeople to talk about their initiatives and their innovation. Uber Freight to be one of them, to be honest with you, as one that I've applauded on that. And so that's one piece of advice I would give people is talk to the women in your companies and know that give them an opportunity to share their stories and the company's stories. That's one big thing that I really love seeing more of. I think another aspect of that too comes from, I think, honestly, people like you and myself, I see more women taking a social media and using it as a stage. The Supply Chain Gals is one that you and I really love watching. A really great Instagram account, LinkedIn account is just starting to grow. But giving these platforms to women to allow them to not only be incredible assets to their companies, but also thought leaders. I think people really underestimate the aspect of a thought leader in this industry and what that could mean for your company and partnerships and growth and strategy. We are usually naturally good at making relationships and keeping those going and building upon those. So those are like two big areas I just feel like in the last couple, Rebecca, I think you're one too, that are these women that are saying, hey, we have these tools now that make this barrier of entry, right, into thought leadership that allow me to take that step forward. And I also say that because I think there's plenty of people in this room that probably have really great stories to tell too. And we're in the day and age where you can run with that and make that happen. And it will change the trajectory of your career and likely the company that you are supporting too. So while that might not be engineering or tech or coding, it is an aspect that I think does help grow this industry and push that inclusive narrative as well.
Moving into sort of the partnership realm, because partnerships there's challenges that exist not just in the United States but globally. Nathalie, can you kind of touch on what are some of those challenges or maybe aha moments that you've experienced with developing a partnership program, not just in maybe in the United States but maybe globally as well?
Yeah, sure. Good question. Partnership is, for me, it's really about like cultural nuances as we obviously scale partnerships, as we grow this supply chain connectivity. It was the same kind of challenge I had also at Google digital years, where everything you think as a test market could be scaled quite easily. So it's understanding who drives the decision, how to build the relationship first. Like a lot of partnerships is about like tech, relying on tech, trusting the tech. So testing the tech, evaluating it, but also how do you convince your own leadership, your own team to move faster, to build faster? At some point, it's about the balance for me always between like how do we use existing tech and how do we build in-house, and the balance of these two. So partnership helps to bridge the gaps in between tech, scale, whatever are the innovations we have in-house, the partnerships we can also co-brand, the co-innovation with some of the partners we've built with Oracle, like big software companies. And it's been like a challenge to really position that in the supply chain and really foster this collaboration at scale for different markets. Cultural nuances is really important to me as well as, I mean, my aha moment, as you asked me, I remember I was in Europe at that time and I was fully ready for a financial set of data metrics to really scale these partnerships, at that time in multiple markets. And at that time, my boss, my manager came to me and was like, I have a big deal. Like, we need to make this presentation with no metrics. And I was like, wow, interesting. So it was like, hey, build the trust, make sure like you connect them at a higher level. You really build the trust. You really understand each other before even you speak to their wallets. So that was really my aha moment in some of the markets where it's not just about like investment. We all want and all aim to go to more efficiency, reduce the balance sheet, I would say, and make sure like the people we employ are really looking at the high efficient tasks they can manage on their day-to-day basis and making the productivity and making the manufacturing more efficient. So tech is really helping and partnership is building the framework to enable that.
And then Oana, sort of the same question. What are some of those aha moments when you think about the partnerships and how you approach them at Dexory?
So interesting enough, I also used to work in partnerships when I was at Google, just like Nathalie. We did not know each other beforehand, I promise. And the biggest shock to me was, not necessarily shock, because I think I probably was expecting it, but coming from a name like a big tech company, like a Google, potentially an Uber, every time you reach out to a company and you say, let's partner, they're like, of course. And like everyone wants to be associated with your name and your brand. But when you're starting a startup and no one knows who you are, and also we pretty much kind of started a new category of robotics a couple of years ago. No one had heard of anything around using robotics to scan things inside warehouses and doing inventory management, getting visibility, getting data from warehouses. So it's completely new. we were no names. So having to kind of approach partnerships from that angle was very, very different. And I think knowing what you can bring to the table and what you can offer and being extremely confident in that was probably the big aha moment for me. And also being extremely open and humble to how you can kind of work with the other party to ideally both kind of advance faster and be much more efficient in what you're doing in the market. It took probably one or two big names to kind of establish us out there in the market, and after that happened, then it all kind of started to come one after the other, and a snowball effect was created. But those first two were probably the hardest to like ever get in my entire career, and I'm still kind of very, very thankful for those those two partners that really kind of bet on us in the very early days, adopted our technology, talked about it. We became massive advocates out there in the market for us. And I mean, ever since, I mean, we co-develop a lot of new features with our partners and our customers as well. We open new markets together with some of our integrators. So it's been going into many different directions since, but it's kind of that first step when you come out of nowhere is it's quite hard to get through.
And I imagine sort of the confidence behind your products makes it much easier to sell as far as a partnership relationship because of that confidence, no matter what your gender is. And Rachel, I'm curious on the shipper side of things. Do you experience that as well, where it's really about the product first versus sort of the geographical maybe cultures that might look down on a woman in a leadership role?
In the U.S., obviously, it's changed. Internationally, though, it's still a challenge. I was just in Asia in January, and you still feel it in certain countries. So they assume if there's a male traveling in your group, they're the most senior person. That has not changed. So it's interesting. I take an approach that I don't say anything. I wait, and then they realize, like, who's in charge. It's interesting, and then they kind of, like, have to kind of pedal backwards. But it's interesting. It's still going on. And so I think that's a global challenge as more and more women get into supply chain. Manufacturing is global, that in some countries that women are just not treated equally, and you're negotiating, you're setting up relationships, like you're having partnerships. So they have to change how they are towards you, knowing that you're building a relationship and you want to have this really a partnership that you have with them, not just transactional. And so they really have to start changing their ways. So I really think we're going to continue to watch how that, and I'd like to see in some countries more and more women. I can tell you, like in India, it's great. A bunch of factories we work with, the women are the CEOs. The women are in charge. Like, it is great. And then in other countries, it's you have one woman in management, maybe total. And in a country you would think that would have more, not always. So it's interesting, depending on like where you are geographically and what countries, is where is it more welcoming, and where in other countries where you don't see the progression as fast as we as women would like.
I wish we had another hour to continue this discussion, because this is fantastic in order to hear these different perspectives on all sides, from media, from logistics, and also the shipper side of things. We've got time for all of the panelists to answer one more question, and that is, who do you follow as far as women in supply chain that you find inspirational? Grace, I'll start with you.
Well, this person gets to the first mention because she quite literally messaged me about 24 hours ago. Shelley Simpson is one of my favorite people to watch. She is a perfect example of someone who has built herself up in the ranks of a company and now leads J.B. Hunt. And not only that, but leads a very tech-forward mindset in that organization. She surrounds herself with strong women in management roles, and she highlights those on social media as well. And on top of that, she goes out of all the things she could do in a day. She sends me a random message about something that I'm working through. And she leads by example, and that is why the outcome of her career is there. So that, for me, I think is the person that I want to highlight, because if you watch her growth, and also I think what's great about it is you watch her growth and you watch the growth of J.B. Hunt as an organization, there's a reason she's earned the role that she's in today. So she is probably the person I would say go follow.
Nathalie, what about you? Who are some women in supply chain that you look up to?
I don't have a person I follow. I would say I follow more broadly women as they are accomplished, they're more in their career path, they take more on their shoulders. I'm always interested on what's the balance with having also and raising kids. I have 3 kids. what's the right balance for us, like showing up, really, like it's our time, like I felt like in my career, I was sometimes like not left behind, never, but I had to step down a bit to really also have my moments with my family and making sure I was making the right decisions. So I am more like, I would say agnostically like interested on all those women's stories that really balance this career, their career, and balance also their hobbies, their passion. I'm very deep into sports, so it's really like a balance for me of understanding how do you show up as a leader? How do you grow your career path? How those women have been successful in also raising their kids there and being like the pillar in their family and don't forget about themselves.
Well said. Oana, you're next.
Yeah, I think I probably won't pick a person either, but I would definitely encourage everyone in the room to have a look at all the speakers, women speakers at this event, and then just follow them on LinkedIn because there's some fantastic voices out there. And I think, going back to that diversity of thoughts and kind of experiences is just incredible to see. I think the Manifest did a great job to kind of have that diversity kind of angle to it. So definitely kind of try and just spend 5 minutes to follow them. But I think just wanted to briefly build on what you were saying earlier, which is I've seen probably now hundreds and hundreds of warehouses around the world. And I was actually reflecting on this in preparation for the panel today. I find it quite interesting that I think in a lot of the European countries, you can actually see a lot of women across the entire kind of board, I would say, from obviously kind of drivers of lorries to drivers of forklifts and kind of people inside the warehouse itself, and then higher up in leadership. And there's more and more women across the UK and Europe kind of leading big 3PLs and being kind of chief supply officers for the big brands. So I think it's changing so fast, and it's just fantastic to see that come together for an industry that personally, when I kind of moved over from the tech side, I wasn't expecting to see that diversity. So hopefully that's going to spread out more around the world. I think, kind of representing Europe here, definitely kind of they're doing a good job there. So yeah, if anything, do follow the speakers here because I think they're fantastic.
Well said. And then Rachel, we'll end it with you. Who's the women that you look up to in supply chain?
So I would say like throughout my career, it's more like women that created things. So originally, Martha Stewart, like we actually sold to her in the early 2000s. We had a line, so we got to work with her. It was like impressive to see what she built. Then Sheryl Sandberg, she had to reinvent herself when her husband passed away, and that was really interesting. And then my first boss, like she's been an inspiration. She went on to be the first woman in like chief supply chain officer at CVS, at Hasbro, at Ocean Spray. Like she was a pioneer in the industry. And so she really kind of was my guiding light, probably more, she doesn't know as much as she was like, because I talked to her, but not like in that kind of way. So throughout like all the years, because there wasn't a lot of women to look up to. And I still, as you said, we're still pioneering, right? We're still finding the path. We're still making the way. And so it's for us, for future generations, our colleagues today, and everyone out there.
Well, I think that was a mic drop moment because that's a perfect way to close out this discussion. As a reminder, we do have one more session right after this. So if you want to stay in your seat and watch the next one, please do. But that is about it for this panel. I echo these statements as well. Please follow all of the women speakers and the ones that you find interesting and connect with them. And let's continue to grow and learn from each other and build a better future. Thank you all.